Good morning to everybody. We have a really nice sized crowd today, so I want to thank you guys for joining in and showing interest. And as you may have noticed, the title of the session is Knowing Your Market. So that's really what we're going to focus on here. I'm going to sort of break it down into kind of two parts here. And we're going to start really high level just by going into some of the final data from last year and just kind of look at Connecticut as a whole, point out a couple sort of regional talking points for you guys on that. And the second part is we're going to go live into the live data here in market reports. And we're going to do a kind of a live property in that scenario, really just kind of walk through modeling out how we might use this tool to go in and sort of build the story around each of your listings. I think this is organized in a way that makes it really, really easy for you guys to just plug it in anytime you have a new property or a prospect come onto your desk. So we're going to go through that. So without further ado, I am just going to go ahead and get started. And since we've got a lot of folks on the webinar, I'm going to kind of keep a quick pace on everything. But if you have questions, drop them into the chat, and we will spend the last couple of minutes kind of reviewing them at the end. So if that sounds good, we will get going. So I assume most of you guys have probably been into the SmartMLS stats tool as well. We got a lot of stuff on the tool, and it's really designed to figure out what you want to do and send you directly to the data that's going to help that. So, some folks might want to come here and just browse some of the training material. Some folks might want to find, opportunities by slicing and dicing up the market, or maybe even just plugging data into specific moments in a transaction. But the big thing we're going to focus on is this concept of knowing your market, which really everybody who is in real estate has got a need to keep an eye on things and support deals. So up here on the top, of course, we have these monthly PDFs that are going to be posted. We put out the quarterlies and the yearly as well. I want to focus on the year-end report right here, which I thought was really, really interesting in looking through it. And if you haven't taken a look at this yet, it looks a little something like this. And it's not a long report. It's got about 5 pages in it. But it's really designed to just help you kind of go through and get the highlights very, very quickly on what's going on here and communicate that out. And so what I'm going to do is just go in here and just kind of go through about 3 or 4 things that I thought was useful in looking at this data. And so you notice that I'm on the first page here where we are just looking at like the overall sales summary. And so in short, I know there's a lot of question about, the activity in the market and interest rates and what we're seeing. So generally speaking, you saw Connecticut hovering around 44,000 sales before the pandemic. Obviously, we had some unique situations where that bounced up to in the mid 50,000s. And as the interest rates started to pop up there, obviously there was some disruption in the market, and it brought us down to this level of 34 in 2023. So the moral of the story here in terms of just total activity, total commissions that is going around and all that is we still haven't really recovered from that. And, I think that might be a little shock from the market. They're just not sure how to respond to these interest rates, and it's going to have to kind of settle and normalize for that to pick back up. But we are at about 75% of pre-pandemic levels. So that's kind of the soundbite when you guys are reading the news and all of that. This is what's actually happening in Connecticut. Now, the good news, if you're, I guess, a seller or just for looking in the market in general at pricing, things are continuing to kind of blow up. And it's crazy. If you've looked at the migration reports on SmartMLS stats, a lot of folks coming in from New York, a lot of different reasons I'm sure you guys know, but you can see here that the median sale price went up 11%. And if you look at just the price of 1 square foot of real estate, that went up around 9% as well too. So, we're not seeing this in every market. Connecticut is a really, really strong market, just so you know. And that's where we stand at the end of 2024. So, the big question when I see those numbers, and you probably do too, is what can we expect? Where are these numbers going to go? And the answer to that is scattered all around the platform. And it's really in this idea of buyer demand, right? Which is these metrics of percent closed above asking or below asking and days on market. And what they're going to do is really tell us the strength of competition from the buyers. And so that's going to either put upward pressure or downward pressure on that current market price. And so the moral of the story, as we're looking forward, really, is that like this is uncanny. 2.87, it hasn't changed. You have the asking price here in the market, and then you have buyers that are collectively agreeing that those asking prices are worth 2.87% more than what they're paying. So, I would be very hard pressed to find a scenario where this was that high and prices contracted. So, big picture, that's kind of what we're expecting. And I think that is mirrored a little bit in the days on market, which if you look maybe here at the median at 14, this even went faster, 4%, I'm sorry, 4 days faster at 2024. So, there's urgency in the market. There's a willingness to open up their wallets and bid a little bit extra over asking. And, those are all really, I guess, good signs if you're a seller out there. Now, the last thing I want to point out in the market report here is this idea of supply and demand. So this is something we're always looking at, which is really the balance between sellers and buyers, which goes back to like economics 101. And so you'll notice here that if we look at, for example, new listings that are coming into the market, they've kind of stayed the same. They even had a little bit of an uptick in 2024. So, a few more sellers are saying, hey, I want to come and enter the market. And what we want to look out for in that is we want to see how these pendings respond. Because if you're in a market where prices are inflated beyond where the sellers are willing to respond with, you're going to see this number deplete. And that's going to typically tell you that there's potentially some downward pressure on those prices. So good news here, last takeaway on this market report is that you're not seeing that. You're actually seeing these pendings go up, which is, I think, a really, really good sign to keep in balance and that everything is fluid and all of that. So, high level, overall, good news on the Connecticut market. Obviously, all of you guys are working in your respective areas. Within this report, I would encourage you to go through and sort of see where those areas compare to the state in general. I think knowing that data point is a really nice thing to be able to say. For example, in Windham County, single family, you've got the most competitive, bidding at 5% over asking over the entire state. So, these reports are really intuitive on page 5, and I'd encourage you to check that out. So that is sort of high level again on the end of the year market report. I'm sure most of you guys are thinking that's cool, but I've got deals that are looking at hyper local areas and I only service certain parts of the state. So let's get into that side of things and go into the live data here, which is the market reports tool, which you guys have probably seen. And so in this report, I'm going to basically just do like a case study for you. I think it's easier this way so we can, kind of see how we would walk through the talking points. And I'm in Meriden, I hope I pronounced that right now, Connecticut, just looking at Zillow, kind of, what maybe one of your sellers would be looking at on their screen. And, obviously they have some basic data points in here about, days on market. It's all a little bit disjointed. They don't have a whole lot of insights about the forest through the trees. So what we're going to do is take this one listing right here, which is a 1,600 square foot, 3-bedroom house. And we're actually going to take this over to the market report tool. And we're going to try to craft a little bit of a story here using these different pages. And, of course, you guys are all going to have your own way of doing this. You may only have one little tidbit of data that you want to grab out of this tool. It's really up to you. But what I'm going to do is kind of go through a little bit of a story here. And the way that I like to set these stories up is I like to potentially talk about the market and look at where we've come, okay, the past, to put things in perspective. I want to look at where we are now, specifically with pricing, because that's what people really want to know about. And then go back to what can we expect to see in the future. And so I think if you can kind of weave those 3 parts into your story, you've got a pretty good audience. They follow you look like you're an expert and everything's good. So the first thing I usually start off with, we're here in Meriden, of course, kind of looks like the same right here, but we've got a lot more data kind of packaged in here. I like to start with the appreciation question. I think this is a nice, kind of a good feeling sort of thing to start with, where almost everybody's happy to see how much their house has gone up. And so I usually do this here in the yearly sales and pricing place. And what I've done here is basically just if they've bought in 2016, this is a really nice image that just makes them feel good about possibly coming to market, in that they have achieved almost a 2x growth in terms of the median sale price in that area. And you can display this however you want. Price per square foot might help to sort of normalize it for more sophisticated clients. You may even go up here and look at specific size ranges in their size range. But however you look at it, this is a really nice, good place to start that can show them what their appreciation is. So that's kind of where this market has been for the last couple years. And so to kind of show where we are now, I'm going to start at the top and really just go straight into this kind of short and medium term, pricing page. And what this is going to show us is sort of an expectation of, where pricing is at the moment. And again, yeah, you guys have probably seen this. We can see 2023, 2024. So every month is kind of habitually above 2023 prices, which gives a sense of kind of optimism about the market. And you can see that here in January, we're actually up 8% from last January. So again, you can sort of craft this image however you want in your presentation. But the goal is to sort of give them the idea that, it's a good time to sell and kind of have sort of good feelings about coming to market with you. So from there, I kind of like to go in and start to look at, now that we have the pricing in place, what does the market look like out there? What is the environment in terms of, supply and demand, the strength of the buyers, all of that activity? How can I sort of paint the picture that this is an opportune time potentially to list? And so I come in here to inventory to sort of do that. And this has a couple things that really help to kind of convey what I want. And so, for example, the months of supply here, which is an indicator of whether it's a buyer or seller's market, is incredibly low. You can see down here, if we actually look at the breakdown of that, this two to $400,000 price range, it had 20 active listings now, but 25 sales last month. So there's a lot of activity going on. There's very low inventory, kind of relatively speaking. And so that's just a really strong sign. And so, my question is how have sellers responded to that recently? And the answer here, in looking at this asking prices, when you look at the price per square foot, it is literally right now at the highest that it's ever been. So that's an indicator of really seller sentiment, and the fact that they're very bullish on the market, in that they kind of have an advantage with all of these numbers. And then so the last thing that I kind of look at here is, of course, that supply and demand kind of side. And so we have the numbers up here. We have 3% more listings coming to market in January, but we have 10% more pendings. And so if I kind of lend my attention to that, the logic on here is, if I have more listings coming to market at a really high price, if buyers are not responding to that price, they're typically going to pull back, and you're going to start to see pendings go down. And you are not seeing that here in Meriden, single family. You're actually seeing those pendings go up. So again, that's just a really good sign. And again, you can use little snippets of this to craft your story. You don't have to use it all, but the goal is that it's painting you as an expert, and also bringing an optimistic kind of viewpoint. So the last thing that I sort of want to talk about, or in this presentation with them, is the idea of where the market might be heading. And the reason I want to do this is kind of twofold. obviously I want to set expectations. I want them to understand if we're seeing a frenzy of bidding activity or not so much. But I also want to sort of invoke a little bit of an urgency, which is kind of a little bit of a sneaky sales trick, but it's also the absolute truth when I look at this data. So this market right here, it was lots of competitive bidding last summer or the 2023 summer. And so we saw that kind of come down in the winter months, and it was still rock and roll out there, 3% above asking. And even in the summer here, it was pretty strong. But the one noticeable thing that I'm seeing here is that in January, it's for the first time in 2 years, going under asking. And so, it's still a strong market out there, but there is a slight little kind of glimpse that perhaps there is a pullback from some of the frenzy. Okay. You guys know all about that. You can feel it out on the streets. And I'm hoping that this data sort of helps us to articulate where the top or the bottom, might be. And when I look at days on market as well here, it kind of mirrors that same story, that we're starting to see buyers be a little bit more hesitant. So, moral of this story is this kind of final chapter here in this kind of what's coming next is that it's a great time. Prices are high, activity's happening, but we might want to move forward slightly quickly on this because there is an indication it could be pulling back. Okay, so that is kind of my takeaway of this. And hopefully you guys followed along a little bit with that. So we do have a few minutes left. I'm going to just kind of bounce through a couple other things that I think are useful here. So one kind of word as we're going through using these, and this is just like a tips and tricks kind of thing. The tendency is to want to narrow down these filters as small as you can go, and I think that's great if you're running a CMA. I would just want to kind of reiterate that this report is really about sort of like trends on a semi-macro level. So we want to make sure this number of sales is at least maybe 20 to 30 or more. So I just want you to keep that in mind. You don't want to put too much in here so that you have very few sales. All of these charts are going to look really wacky and they're not really going to give you a whole lot of insights. Now, one thing you can do, depending on the housing stock in your neighborhood, and of course, we can also see a little bit about that housing stock here in the housing breakdown if you want to browse through and take a look at it. But you sometimes may want to open up the geography and look at a wider geography, but go and take a thin slice of that geography, like for example, 1,500 to 2,000 square foot properties, and make some sort of commentaries about that little slice of the market, whether it's the luxury property market, the one bedroom condo market, or whatever. Kind of at a wider territory. So you can see here, I'm sort of doing that. And this just is another way to sort of provide more depths into your commentary, where it's not just like, here's the city, here's the metrics. It's here's a very specific section of kind of the larger area and what it's telling us. So I am going to actually leave it at that. I'm going to go back here to the homepage. We are at 25 minutes, which is exactly where we wanted to end up on here. If you guys have any questions, you can reach me and the team, of course, on the contact support. I'd also encourage you to, take a look at some of the training materials here, especially if you guys are running teams or, leading an office and you have, monthly meetings. I know that there's a lot of need for training material and things like that. This is an attempt to basically package those up into bite-sized little pieces that you guys can maybe share with your teams and hopefully have people become a little bit more data-driven utilizing the tool. So I'm going to go ahead and stop at that. I want to thank you guys for joining in. Hopefully you got a few things out of the session today. And unless anybody on the team wants to chime in, I will go ahead and check the chat and close things out. Thank you guys.
Hey Brent, it's Barbara. There's
Yeah.
two people had some questions about your point on why buyers are pulling back. Could you just reiterate that point?
Yeah. Okay. So the buyer's pulling back. I mean, regardless of where you're looking right now in the statewide or most markets throughout Connecticut, you're seeing, prices that are incredibly aggressive. They're at all-time highs. Um, for example, I'm here in the inventory section and I can see the asking prices are at all-time highs. So, you know, generally, if you're out there looking to come into the market, you're kind of noticing that a little bit. And the question that I normally have is how do buyers feel about that? Not just one of them, but collectively. What are they saying in response to that? And so the way that I answer that question is I look over here at the buyer demand, these kind of indicators of buyer demand. The first one being percent closed over asking. And I see that if we have a number that is under the asking price collectively across the market, it's telling me that we are not seeing two, three, four, five people come to each deal bidding the asking price above market. We are seeing the buyers instead retract a bit and potentially cause those sellers to kind of pull back the reins and maybe be less aggressive on their asking prices. And the days on market is showing that too. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of my indicator that shows me what's happening out there. If we print a chart, where is the icon? To print a chart, basically, there's a download button right here. So this allows you to select specific pages that you might want. Most people probably don't need the entire report, but you might want, the high level tables overview, and you can just hit download there. The big way that I typically do it is just in a snapshot like this. You guys probably all know how to do on your computer. You can Google it if not, and you can just grab a chart like that. There's not a button to take out each one, but that's an easy way to do it. Or right click and you can export this data into an Excel spreadsheet. So if some of you guys want to manipulate the data, that's possible too.
And there was a common question also about how to get into Smart Stats. Smart Stats can be found within Connect MLS in your horizontal navigation bar. Within Connect MLS, there's a reports menu option, and underneath that, you'll find Smart MLS Stats. So it is not, I repeat, not a tile on your dashboard, but it is accessible from within the Connect MLS system.
Well, thank you again, everybody. Appreciate hosting Barbara, and appreciate you guys showing up. And again, we'll be doing two more of these on different topics tomorrow and Thursday if you guys are interested.